Hello again, another Agricolor React, and today we will be watching Fixing Europe's Borders and Making Everyone Upset from General Knowledge. And we'll watch a few videos, made reactions to a few of these videos, but this one's gonna be interesting, I guess, so let's just jump in and see. Interesting.
The comments on this video are going to be fun, huh? I think it's going to be a record of about 10 to 12 different countries that are going to be mad at me. A couple weeks ago, I saw this video by Geography by Jeff where he redesigned the state borders of the United States. It's a great video. You should definitely go watch it. And it's from where I drew inspiration, this idea to do the same thing. But
why is the Poland still the same?
So let's redesign Europe's borders.
Okay.
Again, remember, this isn't to be taken super seriously.
No,
I'm not
obviously
advocating for any country to disappear and not seriously defending annexations or losses of territory. Let's start out west and then travel east. We're going to begin with Portugal. Portugal is one of the most well-defined nation states in the world. Am I saying this because I'm Portuguese and I'm biased? A little bit,
yeah,
but it is true. The truth is, Portugal is often presented as a perfect example of a nation state, along with countries like Japan, Poland, Greece, or Iceland, countries where a single ethnic group is dominant, and contrasting with places like Canada or Belgium, where essentially different nations exist within the borders of the single country. Because of that, these perfect nation states are less likely to fall apart or break apart. And that's the reason why I think Portugal wouldn't lose any territory. It also has had the same border since like 1243. I did, however, think it would be interesting to add Galicia to Portugal. This is based around a small movement called reintegrationism, a linguistic movement in Galicia that advocates for the recognition of Galician and varieties of the Portuguese language as a single language. Galician is in fact very similar to Portuguese, arguably more similar than it is to Spanish. And Portugal emerged from Galicia when it was first created, sort of. In addition, a small independence movement exists within Galicia too, and a potential success in breaking away from Spain might be followed by an integration with their language brothers of Portugal, perhaps with a status of an autonomous region like the Portuguese archipelagos of the Azores and Madeira. Oh, and also we could finally regain Olivença. It is legally Portuguese after all, despite being occupied and ruled by the Spanish. And then we have Spain, precisely. Just like Galicia, other Spanish regions have independence movements too. The strongest ones, and I would say the only serious ones that have a real chance of succeeding, are the Basque Country and Catalonia. So in this map, I decided to give independence to those two new countries that Europe would have. I also thought, hey, what if the Balearic Islands got independence too? They're of course too small to be self-sustaining as a country, and they don't have
but tourism
that I am aware of, but they do have a lot of tourism. Yeah. They could potentially take advantage of conditions that other small island nations do too, perhaps becoming a tax haven and a fellow microstate like Monaco and Andorra, which by the way in the scenario I think would continue existing too. To make up for these losses, I think it would make sense for Spain to finally re-annex Gibraltar. I mean, come on, England, colonial times are over. Why do you have this place in the middle of the Mediterranean? It doesn't make much sense. Now, as you may notice on the map, part of the claimed Basque Country and Catalonian territories reach into France. So they would lose a bit of territory there. Let's see what else would change for them. First, the island of Corsica, which is now part of France. Corsica is French today, but it used to be Italian before, and it also has a small independence movement, which used to be bigger. Its economy and culture are similar to that of southern Italy, so I think it would make sense for it to join its southern brother of Sardinia and become southern Italian. And by the way, in this map, I also divided Italy in two separate countries, north and south. Northern and southern Italian cultures are a little similar, but they're also tremendously different in other aspects. They have different heritage, economies, the north being urbanized and industrial, and the south being more rural and focused on agriculture and tourism. You could even argue that languages tend to be different depending on where you are, because Italy has so many regional dialects that are...
Well, in all fairness, just recently I learned that Italy wasn't, like, if you think about it, I made reaction to a video about what was it there before Italy, and obviously there was Rome and there was like some Italian kingships, I think, and stuff like that. So it's just been a country of Italy just for past 150 to 100 years. So yeah.
Completely different from each other. One good example of the different heritage is the percentage of blonde people in northern Italy versus the south. Consequence of the North's connections with different parts of Europe throughout its history, including Germany, Austria, and Scandinavia, where light hair is more common. So I think dividing the two into their own countries could potentially make sense, while San Marino and the Vatican would remain independent in this scenario. But now let's go back to France and see what else would change for them. As I mentioned before, France is another good example of a perfect nation state. So apart from losing Corsica to Italy, the only two other changes I thought of were the annexation of the southern half of Belgium, Wallonia, where the population speaks French and is arguably a part of French culture, as well as the potential loss of Brittany. Brittany differs from the rest of France in the sense that it has a stronger Celtic heritage. Brittany is in fact considered to be one of the 6 Celtic nations, along with Cornwall, Ireland, the Isle of Man, Scotland, and Wales. And in fact, if you notice a little further north, I also added Cornwall and the Isle of Man as being independent. Throughout the 20th century, especially at the start of it, there were some movements asking for independence or at least greater autonomy for Brittany within France.
I mean, if you're looking at it from the point of view of people speaking the same language, that kind of way of going about borders, it makes sense. Obviously, it's not going to work in general because that doesn't work like that in geopolitical stuff. So yeah, but I'm guessing he mentioned the fact that there are like independence movements in most of those regions. So yeah, it would be kind of making sense, but in overall, I don't think it would. I mean, like he said in the beginning, this is not to be taken seriously anyway, so why would we? But I'm guessing some people would like to take it seriously. Basically, people in, Basque Country in Spain. I keep hearing pretty much about their fight for independence all my life. There's other places as well, but it's not changing. And I wonder if that's because it's kind of like economical reasons maybe, but then if you look at the countries like Andorra that's being tiny, or San Marino that's being even smaller, I believe, and Monaco, it's like a tax haven, but like he mentioned himself, but like it's possible for small countries to exist.
While this movement has died out a little in the current century, there are still remnants of it. Breton cultural nationalism includes an important linguistic component, with Breton and Gallo speakers still seeking equality with French within the country. So an independent Brittany in the context of a fully redrawn Europe in a scenario like this wouldn't be that crazy. Now, since I mentioned the Celtic nations that are today part of the UK on the map, let's take a look at those next. In a scenario like this, where we're trying to assign territories based on different local cultures
Ireland would
and
be unified.
or nations, I think a breakup of the United Kingdom would be inevitable. In this case, England would stand alone, while Cornwall, Wales, Scotland, and the Isle of Man would go off on their own as new countries, while Northern Ireland would be annexed by the Republic of Ireland and exist together. I mean, half of Scotland still wants independence today, the numbers in Wales are surprisingly going up too, and the Catholic population of Northern Ireland is taking over, making a reunification just a matter of time. I also added a tiny little detail with the Orkney Islands of Scotland joining Norway. These islands are often discontent with the British and Scottish government, and they have very often threatened to ask to be integrated within Norway and first declare independence to be able to do it. Why Norway? Well, Orkney was actually colonized and later annexed by the Kingdom of Norway in 875 and settled by the Norsemen. It was only in 1472 that Scotland, following the failure to pay a dowry promised to James III of Scotland by the family of his bride Margaret of Denmark, annexed the island.
That's a lot of. I never realized how many islands is in Scotland.
Region in this sort of
around Scotland
that we're building. For the rest of Scandinavia, I didn't really think of many changes that could take place. I think Denmark recovering Schleswig-Holstein from Germany would make a little sense in this scenario. It was theirs for a long time, and part of the population there is still Danish. I think Finland could potentially recover some territory it historically lost to Russia, and perhaps the Sami people, common throughout the
Yeah.
north of Norway,
Could get
Sweden,
their own
and
country.
Finland, could achieve independence as their own fully sovereign state too, and plus the re-annexation of the Åland archipelago into Sweden as well. Going back to the west, we can take a look at what the Netherlands would look like and what changes would take place. Since we attributed southern Belgium or Wallonia to France, I think it only makes sense that we would give northern Belgium, Flanders, to the Netherlands. Flemish people are culturally and linguistically kind of Dutch already, so apart from independence for both parts of Belgium, I think this type of territorial redistribution would make sense. The small border regions that are majority German could be given to the Germans too. And perhaps the capital of Brussels, being so multicultural to begin with, due to being the European Union's capital, could become its own city-state, sort of. That would be interesting to see. In the scenario Belgium as a country would disappear completely off the map, I think ISRO Productions would be very upset at that. While Luxembourg also presents a kind of mix between French and German, it has very much developed its own identity, so independence would make sense even in this scenario, unless we assigned it to Portugal because of all the Portuguese immigrants that they have. Do you think that's too biased? Maybe.
There is a lot of people there.
Speaking of Luxembourg's territory, did you know that it used to be way bigger than being partitioned by its neighbors? I think that's a cool video topic on its own, you know, how Luxembourg used to be bigger and then it got smaller. If you want, I can do a full video on it. Switzerland is another case where no changes would occur. It's a pretty perfect example of a nation state too. While language differences do exist with part of the country speaking French, the other speaking Germany, and part of it Romansh, a common Swiss identity does exist. At most, they could gain territory by annexing Liechtenstein, a country whose existence is quite odd. They are already in a custom and monetary union with Switzerland today, so I think a political one could make sense too. And now let's move to Germany and Austria. Despite being reunified at the end of World War II, a lot of differences between East and West Germany remain today. The East is either Protestant or agnostic, while the East and South especially are Catholic. In fact, almost every indicator shows us how the two sides of the country are different. They even vote vastly different in elections, so why not assume these differences and accept
But wouldn't that be the reason for them voting differently and stuff like that? Because of all the, 40 years of being separated into East and West Germany during the Cold War? That would be the thing, isn't it?
Two separate countries. In this case, Berlin would be fully inside the East. West Germany could then exist on its own, while the South, being more predominantly Roman Catholic, could potentially unite with Austria. Despite having its own identity, Austrians are still speaking German and share a lot of common values, cultural heritage, and history with Germans, especially those in the South. So in this scenario, we would have three Germanys: West Germany, East Germany, and South Germany, which would include Austria. We could potentially assign East Germany some more territory within Poland.
Of course, yeah.
In fact, the old borders of the German Empire are still visible in many cultural and political differences within Poland today. However, while those differences are still visible, actual German people living there have been moved into Germany's current borders at the end of World War II. So in this case, Poland would be another country with no changes to its territory. A lot of people maybe would say that they should annex Kaliningrad from Russia, but I have another plan for that. Which brings us to the Baltic countries of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. I think Russian Kaliningrad could be annexed by Lithuania, which could then join its northern neighbors of Estonia and Latvia to form a united Baltic duchy. This was actually proposed to be created at the end of World War I. In that case, it would kind of be a German puppet state, and it wouldn't include Lithuania, only Estonia and Latvia. It ended up not happening because then Germany lost the war on the Western Front. But in modern times, when threats from the East become higher and higher, I think it would make sense for these nations to unite into one confederation to increase their strength. Speaking of the East, I think Belarus's annexation into Russia would be inevitable. They are arguably a de facto Russian puppet state today, so this wouldn't bring much change. Now, to wrap things up for this video, let's move on to the Balkans, which is probably going to be the most problematic part of the video.
Balkans. It's never easy in this case, especially that the war there, it's really fresh in a lot of people's mind, including myself. I was a child when the war was there, but still remember the news reports about it. And it's not something that's easy to do when you have people that lived through the war and through all that separation, and you know, they still remembering all the reasons why did it happen. So yeah, that would be difficult, and I'm guessing problematic for a lot of viewers as well. Almost at the end of the ad as well, so. Okay. And let's go.
The annexation of Moldova by Romania is, I think, only logical, and I think the less problematic. Most Moldovans are Romanian already. I mean, the Moldovan president and opposition leader are both Romanians, and Moldova shares a history and cultural heritage within Romania too. It would be a good way for Moldova to be safe of external threats by automatically joining the EU and NATO, and I think both sides would be happy with this situation. In contrast with this territory gained by Romania, the country would also lose a little bit of territory on the border with Hungary. After World War I, the Treaty of Trianon left thousands of Hungarians outside of Hungary's borders by unfairly reducing their territory too much. While the idea of a greater Hungary is crazy, I think it would be fair for these Hungarians to get to live within Hungary, and so a slightly larger Hungary would exist, taking up parts of Romania and a little bit of Slovakia. Other than that, Slovakia would remain the same, as would Czechia. Slovenia would also see no changes, the same as Croatia and Montenegro. But Bosnia, Serbia, and Albania would. I think the breakaway of Republika Srpska from Bosnia is sadly inevitable, and its annexation by Serbia proper would follow, expanding the territory of the country. The territory gain would perhaps make them more accepting of Kosovo breaking away and potentially joining Albania to consolidate its separation from Serbia. For Bulgaria and North Macedonia, I think no changes would be needed either. And finally, to make the most people mad, what if Greece took over European Turkey? The annexation of East Thrace was a Greek goal until the start of the 20th century. The idea of retaking the old capital of Istanbul, for them Constantinople, was then abandoned as it was deemed as unrealistic, which it was, and to be honest, still very much is. But again, these are just hypotheticals to make us reflect a little bit on the borders that Europe has today and how they could or couldn't potentially change. So a Greek annexation of East Thrace would really clean up the look of Europe's borders over on this side of the continent. But what do you think? I doubt anyone will fully agree with all of these. Even if you agree with some, it's very likely you'll disagree with your country's changes, which I understand. I think I only agree with Portugal because we're only gaining territory and not actually losing any of it. But let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me directly. And if you want to join and access more content, most of all support the channel directly, make sure to join there as well. Either way, I will see you next time for more general knowledge.
Yeah, that was cool. That's a very interesting idea with the redrawing the borders, but obviously that's never gonna happen. Not like that and not peacefully. I don't think there was ever redrawing borders that they were peaceful. Or not shortly after a war. Like the way how Poland looks right now, it's not how it looked. Like you mentioned there that basically Prussian Empire did consisted of most of the like western part of today's Poland. So yeah, and I'm presuming a lot of like countries have similar things. Like Italy was split into multiple different smaller countries before. The same with Germany actually. Like I think before Prussian Empire, wasn't it? And Poland at some stage was split into multiple small kingships. I don't know if that's the right word in English now. Anyway, what do you think about it? Because that was kind of interesting to look at it and think about it, but obviously it's not going to happen, so yeah. It's just hypothetical idea, so yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you tomorrow. Bye!